Hey guys, my name is Drew. Welcome back to NFL Trading Room. And here we're diving into our episode 2 of our summer scouting podcast. We're here in the second week, jumping into defensive tackles today. So, joined again by my co-host Ben. How we doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Lovely day here in Pawleys Island, South Carolina. A lot of good defense tackles have come out of this state, and I think we're going to talk about one today. But yeah, can't wait to dive into these guys.
There we go. Absolutely. His background's a little bit different. He's on vacation. That's why maybe the audio is a little bit different too. So he will be that for next week too. This guy still grinds on vacation. It never stops for this guy. He's
Yeah, I
a
never
real grinder.
stops.
Yeah. So without further ado, we're going to dive into this defensive tackle class. A little early look in what we should be paying attention to this upcoming college football season. I hate to be a downer right at the beginning of the episode, but honestly, I was a little bit disappointed. We talked about this a little bit before we started recording. I'd heard really good things coming into this. We had obviously like a historically good defensive tackle class in last year's draft class. And then I'd heard really good things about this year, so I was coming in with high hopes, thinking maybe we're going to have back-to-back really, really good interior defensive line classes. And I think the top is very good. Like, top-end talent is just as good, if not better, than last year's, potentially. But the depth, a lot of these guys further down the list, I was a little bit disappointed by. So like my top three, I really enjoyed watching, but past that, it was a little bit of disappointment for me. I can't speak for how Ben was feeling, but that's, a little bit disappointing to hear good things about this class and go in and not quite live up. But again, we'll see risers throughout the season. I'm sure guys that aren't even on our radar now. And this is all just very, very early projections. So yeah, without further ado, let's dive straight into our honorable mentions before we dive into our top fives. And Ben, I know you have one more than I do, so I'll let you go ahead and start.
Yeah, I'll start with Patrick Jenkins out of Tulane. Um, he is a DPR right off the bat. I'd say it, but just flat out bad run defender. His anchor isn't great. He's undersized. He gets pushed around against the run. There are flashes where he's able to penetrate um, and make something happen in the backfield, but he's not able to really take on and shed or peek and shed. But as a pass rusher, there is a lot of upside. He's a very good athlete, moves well. He's got good side to side quickness. And he's got a good, 2 to 3 move set that he's able to kind of mirror off each other. Um, and I think while he is undersized, I believe he's like 6'1", 290, something like that. He does have some longer arms, it looks like. So he's able to, win with power, mostly with finesse at times. He's got a good swim move that he breaks out from time to time. But yeah, right now, just a DPR. We'll see if he can improve against the run. But there always is a role for an interior DPR guy, probably has that three technique on third and long.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing we mentioned right before we went live is that um, it seems like all the guys that we're going to talk about today kind of fall into two buckets where it's like either your typical like one tech, big body, not a great athlete, run stuffing, just typical nose tackle, prototypical nose tackle, or you have those guys where it's just the really undersized, small, twitchy DPR three techs, like your TJ Sanders, your Kalijah Canties, um, which to me was kind of like this group of really undersized guys. Like you got to be Kalijah Cansey to make up for being an undersized three tech when it comes to my evaluation at least. And I've yet to see that's why I was lower on TJ Sanders last year, because I didn't think he was kind of the level of pass rusher you need to be to really make up for being that 290, 280 pound three tech. So that's kind of why I tend to end up lower on those guys. But that kind of seems to be the theme of the class, at least that I've seen so far. And jumping in the opposite direction of that, I'm going to go. My honorable mention is going to be Jaheim Otis, the defensive tackle. He played at Alabama for the past couple of years. He's now transferred to Colorado. Only played 4 games at Alabama last season before entering the portal mid-season, which was kind of a weird situation. And not a lot of snaps either. He probably had like 50 total snaps in the whole season. So the 2024 size that we have, sample size that we have on tape is very, very small. He played a lot in 2023. Was a major part of their interior rotation in 2023 at Alabama. But yeah, didn't play much, mainly in the South Florida and Western Kentucky games. So even the few reps that you do have in 2024 is not against the very best competition. Jaheim Otis, he's a very, very big frame, 6'5", 330, typical massive nose tackle. I thought he's a pretty good athlete for that size. Not super twitchy, but he can move. They put him at 3 tech and 5 tech sometimes in that weird Alabama front rotation they had. He would get him around the edge sometimes, even at 330. He's good enough to chase things down from the backside, chase down run concepts from the backside. Got very, very long arms, very lanky in that big 6'5" frame. I think he's a good run stopper, very good anchor, can knife through a double team. There's some supposed character concerns that I've heard floated around, obviously too, with it being the weird situation of him only playing 4 games and then transferring midseason. I think you can kind of see that show up on tape sometimes too. There's a little bit of effort concerns. You see he'll take a play off here and there, especially if he's on the backside. If he's not getting things run towards it, just there's some pretty clear lack of effort on tape, which concerns me a little bit. But I think the power, the play strength is very, very obvious in that 330-pound frame. Like he's got a nice long arm, he's got a nice bull rush. I already mentioned the anchor, very, very difficult to move out of the way. So I think, obviously there's not much to grade off of right now. That's kind of why he's lower. I think he's probably more talented and has a little bit better tape than some guys that I have ranked above him, but just the lack of sample size is something that's going to hold him back right now. I assume he'll be the main big dog in the rotation at Colorado, and we'll get a lot more tape in this upcoming season. So he's a name to keep an eye on, but right now, just because the 2024 sample size was so small, not somebody I feel super comfortable planting a flag on now. There's definitely some flashes there of the play strength and as a run stopping 1 tech. But yeah, just a guy to keep an eye on at Colorado, but nothing I can say too concrete right now, just because of the lack of reps. But yeah, I thought the limited reps at Bama, there were some flashes for some pretty good things.
Yeah, and a limited sample size did flash some good things, but again, like you said, we're just going to need a bigger sample size to really grade anything in concrete. But he should be, that lead D tackle at Colorado, and we'll see. He's got a really good frame, like you said, some pass rush flashes, really good anchor. So we'll see where he ends up.
Yeah, for sure. And then I think you had one more honorable mention before we dive into our top fives.
Right. I'm going to talk about Xavier Harris from Ole Miss. Extremely tall player. I believe he's like 6'7", 320 pounds. Looks like it on tape. But of course, because of that, he struggles with leverage at times, and it's just because he's so dang tall. But I thought there were times where he's able to, squat down and get under pads, even at that height. Really strong player. Really no flashes as a pass rusher. He's kind of that. I wouldn't even call him a nose tackle just because he's so tall. Probably that 1 tech, and even played some 3 tech. And then Ole Miss at times, even against 12 personnel, had him lined up as like a 5 tech to defend that edge, which is just insane.
Yeah, 6'7", 340-pound 5 tech.
That's absolutely insane. But he's kind of that typical defensive tackle where he's going to eat up blocks and kind of allow the other guys to make a play. But he is a really, like I said, really strong player, able to penetrate at times. The hands need work. The placement's not always that great. But I thought he moved pretty well at his size. There are good flashes, like a good punch when his hands do land. And even he did show one rep where he had a nice 2-hand swipe in pass rush. But I think overall he's a pretty good run defender, really good anchor to eat up those blocks and allow space for others to make a play. Probably going to be a day 3 guy just with not much pass rush upside, but we'll see where he grows in 2025.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, I think that about does it for our honorable mentions. Not a huge sample size. I think we had more in the edge rusher video than we did this week. But then I guess we're just diving straight into our top fives. My 5, which I think was one of your honorable mentions, I don't think he cracked your top 5, is Kristen Miller, the 3 tech out of Georgia. He's a pretty average frame. I think he's like 6'3", 300, right around there. He looks a little bit lighter on tape to me. But the first thing that jumps out is a very, very twitchy, good mover. Just a guy that's got a lot of speed. I thought he was pretty bendy, honestly, for the times he got to go around the edge on Georgia in that rotational front they use, all the stunts they run. Whenever he's coming around the edge, I thought the guy's pretty flexible, honestly, especially for 300 pounds. Really lanky, long arms. That's the thing. He had great length. I thought he knew how to use it. The thing that jumped off the tape to me, the biggest positive with him was how good of a hand fighter he is. Very, very, active hands is always the thing I go to. Guys that he does a great job keeping his feet churning through contact as well. Just a guy that was always restless. Never let off the line, get into his frame too easily, always prying the hands off. He had a good forklift a couple of times that he flashed. But like I said, just a very, very good hand fighter, just in a bar fight, most reps. Now, the lack of power was really concerning with him. I thought he was a guy that won with a lot of finesse on the inside. I thought he flashed a nice swim move a couple times. The hand usage was nice, was pretty advanced. But you didn't really ever see him win with power. There was no bull rush, and I think that's what concerns me with a couple of guys we're going to talk about on this list is I think there's a very, very difficult path to success at the NFL level on the interior if you can't win with power. There's some guys like the top two we're going to talk about on this list that are so good. Those guys, I would call them both more finesse rushers on the interior than power rushers, but it's very clear they do have that power in their bag. That's just not their go-to. Same thing with Mason Graham last year. Mason Graham had that power. It's just wasn't really his go-to. These guys, I worry that they don't have it at all. It's not an option for them. At least I think that's the case with Kristen Miller. So while I love the hand usage. I love the athleticism and the speed on the inside. I thought he had some nice flash reps against the run. I don't think he's a great run defender, but I thought he knew how to use his length and kind of stack and shed well a couple of times, especially in that Texas game. But on a general level, I'm not sure he's a guy you want being a primary run defender for you. And the lack of power would just be the main thing that concerns me going to the next level. But yeah, the athleticism and hand usage were the two things that popped the most to me.
He's a really good athlete, like you said, really bendy for a defensive tackle. I thought his anchor was pretty inconsistent. He got moved around some against the run. But there are some high-end flashes as a pass rusher. And there are times, where he, uses his hands well and is able to penetrate in the backfield and make a play. I didn't think he was great at stacking and shedding. I think that's a theme that we'll see sometimes out of the top guys is that they're not great at taking on. They're good at penetrating. So they're going to get skinny and try to split that gap. But there were times where he flashed for fine hand placement and taking on. But pretty good ceiling with his athleticism and the flashes we saw as both a pass rusher and with his hand placement in the run game. I think another thing we'll see in this class, and it kind of flips depending on what prospect you're talking about. They either have really refined hands against the run and then not against the pass rush, or they have really refined hands in pass rush and not against the run. So it's kind of an interesting token to flip. But I can see why he would make a top five, really good ceiling, and should be a riser in this class. I had Rayshawn Benny out of Michigan. He's another guy I think is a good athlete at his size. Pretty, serviceable size. I believe he's 6'3", 310. But I thought he had nice hands as a pass rusher. I thought, especially against Alabama, he had a really good bull rush, able to win with some hand swipes and even broke out a swim move. But I think he struggles against the run. He tends to play high against the run. A lot of times, I don't think it's like an effort or motor thing, but a lot of times the offensive lineman gets into his chest before he's able to really extend. I don't know if that's a length thing. I don't know if that's a hand-eye coordination thing. But he does sometimes get moved around against the run. But I did like the flashes I saw as a pass rusher and the occasional penetration to make a splash play. And he should be the top guy in that defensive tackle rotation. Obviously, last year you had Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant ahead of him. But Michigan should have a good defensive line this season with Derek Moore, Rayshawn Benny, TJ Guy, and they always recruit that position well. So he should just have, some good one-on-one opportunities to flash that pass rush. But I think he could, be a riser. I don't think he's going to crack that top three or top two, but he could, end up as maybe the fourth guy off the board next April.
Yeah, for sure. I think the swim moves thing that jumped off to me. I thought that was a really one of the better ones that I watched. I thought he was really violent with it, very, very strong hands. But yeah, the leverage thing was the most concerning with me. I had 297, the weight that I looked at, and I thought that was closer to what he looked like on tape. I thought he looked very,
sure.
very undersized, kind of on the smaller end. And I think that showed up on tape to me too. Obviously, I think you would see the flashes of the bull rush, but on a general level, especially against the run, another guy where I have major power concerns when you're translating to the next level. The anchor's concerning, but yeah, the leverage thing was the most concerning to me. He's standing straight up out of his stance. I mean, there was I don't think I could recall a time where I saw him win the leverage battle on tape. And I think when you mix that with the power concerns and the weight concerns, or just the frame and size, you can lead to some really concerning stuff there. But I think he's another guy that's got a higher ceiling and more of a pass rushing upside 3-tech guy that you're betting on taking the leap this year. But yeah, the concerns against the run with these guys, these undersized 3-techs, are the thing that's really the main hang up with me. So that's why he didn't quite crack my top five. I'm not sure that I saw the enough pass rush juice to make up for being that undersized 3-tech that kind of struggles more against the run. There's a couple of guys that all fit that profile that we're going to talk about coming up. And just jumping straight into my number 4 is going to be Dante Corleone, the defensive tackle out of Cincinnati. And this is another guy we both talked about how we were kind of disappointed with, because this is the guy that had probably the most Like he was being talked about in that upper echelon of the guys that we're talking about in our ones and twos. You know, being a potential first round guy. I'd even heard people rank him above like the guys we're going to talk about later in this video, the top two guys. And I just never really saw that on tape. You know, I mean, he passes the name test. Like that's the Godfather being the nickname. Like he's got all the aura as a prospect. You know, like that's sick. But the tape just didn't match the hype with me. I feel like he's kind of just your generic, run of the mill, run stopping, one tech, nose tackle. I think he's like 6'2", 330, somewhere around there. I saw 320 floating around. The weights are all over the place, but I thought he looked about that size on tape. I thought the hands were powerful. I thought he did a good job against the run. Great anchor against the run. Knew how to knife through double teams. Had a really nice club move that he threw out. You'd see some flashes of some dominant power rushes. A long arm, a bull rush sometimes from the interior. But I thought he was, the lack of athleticism concerned me a little bit. Not very twitchy at all. Not a guy that's ever going to win speed on the interior. He seemed like a very, very generic, just, powerful run stuffing one tech to me. I didn't really see anything that jumped off the tape beyond like a potential late day two, run stuffing guy to me.
Yeah, I do think he's a true nose tackle. But I think he's got the frame for it. Like you think you want that natural leverage. I believe I saw like 6'1", but even at 6'2", you'd be under most of the centers in the NFL.
Yeah.
I think he's a good penetrator against the run. I do think the hand usage needs a lot of work. I think there are times where it's definitely better against the run, but there are still times where he misses, and he's really wide with his hand placement.
Yeah.
He is really strong for the most part against double teams. There are the occasional flash as a pass rusher. But at the end of the day, I think he's an average athlete. I think he broke out like an arm over move that was pretty good. And even while his hands aren't refined, they're still active. So, he's at least trying to land a correct punch. He's just not very accurate in doing so right now. Like you said, I think he's your typical one tech nose tackle. I don't think he's, got a super high ceiling because I don't think there's an elite athlete or even a necessarily good athlete in there. But there is a role for that undersized nose tackle. Probably not in every snap or every down nose tackle, but should eventually be a contributor against the run someday.
Yeah, for sure. So I think not to talk down too much on the guy the prospect. I think he's fine. I think he's in his role that he's going to play at the next level. I think he's going to do well at that. But I just think that the first round hype and then the amount of hype there's been around him so far is a little bit puzzling to me. I'm just not sure I saw that level of player, but I think in his niche and his role that he's going to play at the next level, I think he certainly fits the bill for that. Jumping into year number 3.
Or number 4 or number 3?
Are we at 4? We are at 4. You're right. I skipped ahead.
Okay.
So it'd be year number 4. Whoops.
So this was probably my third favorite watch of this entire class, Dominique Orange out of Iowa State. Really fun player to watch, really active hands, strong player. I think he's really athletic for his size. There are flashes, as a pass rusher, you see a nice bull rush, you see a swim move. He even tried a spin move twice in the games that I watched. I thought he did a really good job at when he doesn't win his initial rush, he kind of hangs back and, is playing the passing lane, and he got a couple PBUs off of that. Although he is strong, there were times against double teams where he got moved around when his hands didn't land. I don't think he's necessarily got the best anchor. He's got strong hands, which help him, kind of stack the run blocking. But I think he's a guy probably I would bet on to end up as my number 3 once we get closer to next April. But right now I would have him as number 4, but probably my third favorite player to watch of these guys that we did watch. And I can't wait to see how he improves next season. It's kind of hard to watch him because Iowa State plays that like dime 3-2-6, which is just horrid to watch the front line of because he's getting double or triple teamed. Yeah, he's getting double or triple teamed every single snap, so it's really hard to see what the heck he can even do because there's nothing you can really do getting triple teamed. But yeah, I can't wait to see what he does this season.
Yeah, Big 12 defenses need to be stopped. They're a crime against humanity. But yeah, Dominique Orange, one of the few players that I actually really had a ton of fun watching out of this group. He's my number 3, so I want to talk about him next. But yeah, he's definitely the most powerful player that I watched on here. Got the most play strength of anybody on this list, I would say. Just an extremely. I saw like I think it was 330 was the weight I had. He looked a little bit bigger than that to me, probably closer to 335, 340. But yeah, extremely twitchy athlete for his size. Honestly, a guy that moves around very, very like reminiscent of Jamari Caldwell from last year, a guy that doesn't look like he's moving about 20 pounds lighter than he is. Thought he was really light on his feet. The swim move is one thing I was going to mention. I threw out. He won with it every time he pulled it out. On the games that I watched, the swim move was actually really effective for him, which is not something you ever see from guys that size, or at least that I have. So that was surprising. A really cool thing to see from him. But yeah, I thought the hand usage was advanced. Just like I said, very twitchy athlete for his size, very, very powerful. He's a very good run stopper. You said the anchor was a little bit shaky. I think it can be at times. Definitely something he needs to work on. But like you said, that not helped by that defensive scheme at all. Definitely the guy that I came away with the most kind of translatable traits beyond the upper echelon of these guys. I think he's the first one out of that. A guy that I had a ton of fun watching. Somebody that I assume will take a rise over this year and probably end up even higher for me when we come around to the draft season next year. But yeah, definitely one of the most fun watches of this group for me. And I guess that was about all I had for him. So jumping into your number three.
Yeah, I had a Zane Durant from Penn State. I think it's a guy that you're a bit lower on,
Mm-hmm.
but I thought I was kind of impressed by him. I thought he had nice hand usage against the run. He's another one of these guys that's undersized, but he's better against the run than against the pass. I think he was like 6'1", 290. I think stylistically, why I liked him so much is I prefer the guys that are able to take on with their hands against the run rather than penetrate. I just think the gaps get smaller at the NFL level, so you're not going to have as much room to penetrate. But I thought in that 290 frame, I thought he looked a little bit bigger than that. But I thought he was powerful for his size against the run, just relentless hands. Um, I thought in the pass rush, I thought he would be better. And there is the flash here and there, but it's really inconsistent. But I do think he's a quick athlete. Probably not the most explosive step like a couple of the guys we're getting ready to talk about. Um, but I do think he's a nice, side to side rangy athlete. There were a couple of times where he's moving two gaps over between the time the running back gets the handoff and the time he hits the hole. I just thought that was really impressive. And there are times where I can see like, probably not a guy that's going to be super translatable, but I did like what I see in the games that I watched.
Yeah, for sure. Zane Durant was probably the guy that I was most disappointed with from this watch because he was the guy that I jotted down really early in this process because I noticed him in my first couple of games watching, Abdul Carter back in August or September of last year, or last draft, I should say. And so he was the guy that I had on my radar. I was excited to watch him because just peripherally watching those other Penn State players, he was somebody that I noticed kind of pop a little bit. Once I finally settled down to watch him, I think it's going to be very reminiscent of everything I said about Kristen Miller and about Rayshon Benny, where it's just these guys that you have to be better than you are to justify being that small. I think the weight I saw was 6'1", 285, somewhere in there. I thought he honestly looked closer to 280. I thought in the games that I watched later on in the season, especially that like the Penn State or not Penn State SMU game in the playoffs. The playoffs he looked really really small by the end of the season. I don't know if he had just trimmed down over the course of the season, but it looked concerning to me. And I think echo everything you said. I thought he was definitely better against the run than as a pass rusher, and I think that's a concerning skill set to me when you look at guys that translate to the next level. That's a weird skill set and a weird niche to play at the next level, to be that 6'1", 280-pound 3-tech, that undersized guy that's also going to come in as a rotational run stopper rather than as more of a DPR undersized 3-tech. And I think the hand usage is nice. You see that the hands are active, kind of that windshield wiper hands, things I was talking about last week. He's always got them moving. Relentless was the word we keep coming back to. I thought he was pretty relentless with that. A twitchy athlete, I think, which you need to be at that size. But he's a very, very good mover, very fluid with it. I wish the pass rush thing is what concerns me. I thought he kind of goes in without a plan, kind of reckless, kind of out of control most of the time. I thought that the hand usage wasn't as polished in the run as it was, or in the past games as much as it was against the run. Like you mentioned earlier, it's kind of a theme with a couple of these guys. But really to me, it's just a concerning kind of blend of that skill set that I just have a hard time seeing a path for a guy at the NFL level to be that undersized 3-tech, or at least as undersized as he is, and be better against the run than you are against the pass. So that's something that worries me, and why I'm a little bit lower on him than I kind of wanted to be, because I came in wanting to like him. He's a guy that I had jotted down early. I thought, peripherally I would like him. I kind of tend to fall for those guys that are that twitchy, undersized. That's not normally something I have a problem with. But yeah, I can't think off the top of my head of a path to success for a guy that's more of an undersized three tech that kind of is in that run stopping niche in a rotational front. So unless he can take obviously these guys, he could take a leap as a pass rusher this year and end up in that role as a guy who can be on the field as that undersized three tech. But as of where he is right now, probably not a guy I feel comfortable putting in my top five. But the athleticism is nice. Always these guys, he's got a high ceiling with those athletic traits that he has. Always a guy that can take a jump this year.
You want to just start with Caleb Banks?
Works for me. All right, you want to take the lead on that one?
Sure. Caleb Banks was probably the most fun prospect I've watched this entire cycle. He is lightning quick off the ball, super athletic, plays with a really high motor. His hands are as quick as you'll see on the interior, and they are relentless. He is super active as a pass rusher. There are, 1 to 2 lapses per game against the run where he can kind of fly upfield and take himself out of the play. But I thought for the most part really did a good job at holding his gap. And he's another guy that, I prefer the guys that take on instead of penetrate, but he's, really good at penetrating. When he does take on, he's really strong in doing so. I described Reuben Bain Jr. last week as a bull in a china shop. Caleb Banks is like a controlled bull in a china shop. It's like you get all the good things about the bull in the china shop, but it's also super refined and controlled. I thought his bull rush was phenomenal. I thought he was a really bendy athlete I think he was listed at 6'6", 325. He's kind of like Dominic Orange in that when he doesn't win that initial rush, does a good job playing the passing lanes, great hands to bat down passes. His swim move is deadly against the run and in the pass game. He broke out a club rip that just absolutely, and I think it was against LSU.
Devastating.
Yeah, just absolutely destroyed. I think it was LSU's left guard. But yeah, really, really fun player. Sucks that he plays for Florida because he's going to, probably cause some problems for my Tennessee Vols. But
dude,
really
I
fun
think
player
I had
to
like
watch.
17 clips jotted down from that LSU game for that cutoff.
He's insane.
He tortured Garrett Nussmeier in that game.
Yeah.
But yeah, Caleb Banks, he's my number one. He's my current number one overall prospect. He's outstanding, man. I think really the only negative that I came away with is what you were talking about, where sometimes he would kind of run himself out of a play against the run. I don't think it was an anchor issue most of the time. I think there were a couple of times where he'd end up on the ground because of some balance issues against the double team, but I don't think it was necessarily an anchor issue. But really, if the only issue with him as a run defender is his discipline, that's something that I think can be easily fixed in this next year, or if as by an NFL coaching staff as a rookie, that's a pretty easy fix. That's a good problem to have as a run defender. But yeah, huge frame, 325, 330, but really never loses the leverage battle. He's a guy that I thought got extremely low even at 6'6" and at that size because he's so fluid and flexible as an athlete. Definitely more of a finesse guy on the interior. I think he wins with speed and with his hands a lot more than he does power, but definitely not saying he lacks power at all. Like you said, that bull rush is deadly when he pulls it out. The Ole Miss center had a long day against Caleb Banks. He ended up getting Jackson Dart had his center in his lap for 90% of that game. So yeah, I mean, there's really no weakness to him as a pass rusher in my eyes. I think he can do everything and win in almost every way you need to on the interior. Swim move is awesome. Club rip, like you said, the bull rush is there when he needs to pull it out. I think he does a great job of stacking moves on top of each other. And the thing you were saying about when you don't see a path to winning immediately, being able to back off and kind of play that passing lane, it's a really underrated part of defensive tackle play. And it's something I thought Alfred Collins did really well in last year's draft that didn't get talked about enough. It's a very nuanced and developed kind of trait to defensive tackles that you don't see in guys this young, especially because I'm pretty sure Caleb Banks is on the younger side too.
I believe he's going into his 4th year, I think, because he transferred from Louisville before the 23 season. So he actually is going back to school, even though he was draft eligible this year.
The twitch is the thing I tweeted about it right after I finished up watching him. I mean, he's a 330-pound defensive tackle that has the twitch of like a 240-pound edge rusher. I mean, the guy is every movement is like a loaded spring. I mean, he's just bouncing around those gaps. Just lightning quick. The hand usage, like you mentioned. Yeah, I really just don't see a weakness to this guy as a prospect. My early number one overall pick, number one overall prospect on my board. I'm as big of a fan as you can get on him. And jumping into the other player who's my number 2, your number 1, but again, the margin between these guys is so razor thin. Like they're my number 1 and number 3. The only reason I gave the edge to Caleb Banks over Clemson defensive tackle Peter Woods, who's who we're talking about now, was because there's some supposed injury stuff with Peter Woods. I've heard back and forth some soft tissue stuff. It's very, very early. We don't have exact medical details yet, but I've heard some medical red flags float around with him. But the margin between these guys is razor thin. It's really just, pick your poison. Yeah, Peter Woods, in the same vein, incredibly twitchy for his size. A guy that Clemson had lined up at edge half the time because he was that twitchy. And I think he was 315 was the size I saw float around for him, but he looks a little bit bigger than that. Just incredibly twitchy in that size. Very, very powerful hands. Another guy that I would consider more of a finesse and kind of speed rusher guy on the interior, but not somebody that lacks power at all. Incredible run defender. Just white hot motor against the run, constantly chasing plays down from the backside of concepts. Does a great job, I thought, both penetrating and taking on blocks and shedding. Very, very active hands all the time. Another guy had a great club move. Another guy that I just don't see many weaknesses to is an interior pass rusher.
Yeah, Caleb Banks is my 2 overall in the class, and Peter Woods is my 1. So both of these guys are right at the top for me. Of course, we haven't watched Caleb Downs or some of the other guys that may fall into that category yet. But Peter Woods, insanely active hands. The anchor is insanely good. Probably the strongest player I watched in this class. The refined hand placement is something that's so beautiful to watch because coming off the Edge episode, we talked about how much of a travesty it was watching some of those guys against the run. But man, he's a hand fighter. Plays his gap with great discipline. Like you said, white hot motor to even be able to chase plays back from the backside. Really good athlete. I don't think he had a single problem locking out an offensive lineman's chest in any of the plays that I watched. He got fully extended on almost every single snap. I thought there were times where he's inconsistent as a pass rusher, but the high-end flashes are great. And then, like you said, excellent run defender. And I thought he was probably the best against double teams in this class. He does a really good job at sinking low and kind of holding both points of attack. And it's really an art, to defending double teams because you've got 2 300-plus pound guys converging on you at the same time. And you've really got to get low and drive into that. But yeah, I love Peter Woods. I love Caleb Banks too. These 2 guys are going to be so fun to watch going over this next season.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's weird. I'm not sure I could recall a time where we have like this early into the process such a clear and defined picture of 2 guys that are going to be like bona fide top 5 picks, especially at the same position. But yeah, like you said, I mean they're 1 and 3 on my big board and 1 and 2 on yours. So having these 2 guys at that position be that high of pedigree this early in the process is pretty crazy. Not something you see that often. But yeah, those 2, I mean, just incredibly fun watches. Anybody that's watching, if you haven't gotten the chance to go watch them, that should be at the top of your list. But both just the thing that sticks out to me is just how little weaknesses both they have as prospects. There's nothing that they're bad at, which is just really refreshing to watch, especially against the run, like we've mentioned, the guys we've had to watch at both interior and edge rushers that just cannot defend the run in this class. Very refreshing to watch both of these guys. Just incredible blue chip prospects for both guys. But I think that's going to wrap it up for this defensive tackle list. Be sure to tune in next week, which is probably my most anticipated episode that we're going to do in this whole thing, and it's the quarterbacks, right? It's everybody's favorite, especially in this class. Such a stacked class, so much talent. Probably not all of the guys we're going to talk about are going to declare. I'm sure we'll have some guys that are going to be 2027. But, so much talent to talk about in this quarterback group. I can't wait for it. I'm pretty sure, as a quick teaser, we're going to have the same QB1. Me and Ben, we're both pretty high on one of these guys. So super excited to talk about him. Appreciate all you guys tuning in. If you enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe. Always be sure to leave comments. We always love to debate back and forth on all this draft talk. That's why we love it. That's why it's the best. Everybody sees things differently, interprets things differently. Again, I'll say it at the end of all these episodes. All of these are very early, loose, just guidelines. That's all summer scouting is. All this is going to change when we get another year of tape. Yeah, appreciate all you guys tuning in. Be sure to tune in next week for the quarterback talk. That's going to do it for us this week.